She's our permanent work in progress. My father didn't lower his voice when he said it. He didn't need to. The private wine cellar at Le Jardin French Bistro was insulated with stone and money. Thick walls, low lighting, and the kind of quiet that made every word feel deliberate. He swirled his Bordeaux like he was sealing a deal, not talking about his daughter across the table. Julian laughed softly, the way men do when they're agreeing with someone powerful. My mother offered a tight, apologetic smile toward Sienna, as if to say we tried our best with this one. No one looked at me, but I stared at the crisp white tablecloth instead, tracing a faint wine stain with my finger. 29 years old. Still the family embarrassment. This was supposed to be Julian's engagement dinner. A celebration. Instead, it felt like a merger acquisition meeting where I was the underperforming asset no one knew how to write off. The room smelled like aged oak and truffle butter. Condensation slid slowly down crystal glasses. Everything about the setting whispered success, except me. At least, that's how they saw it. I was Chloe Vance. Younger daughter. Problem child. According to my family, I was still figuring things out. A phrase they'd been using since I dropped out of my MBA program and stopped returning calls from my father's investment firm. I wore a thrifted gray sweater, soft from too many washes, and black flats I'd owned for years. To them, it confirmed everything. Why Father, Richard Vance, sat at the head of the table like a chairman presiding over a board. He built a boutique investment firm in Chicago from the ground up, and it showed, in his posture, his tailored jacket, his obsession with appearances. People mattered to him only in terms of returns. Why Mother lived in the margins of his success. She didn't cut, but she softened the blows. Concerned. Pitying. Always worried about how things looked from the outside. Julian, my older brother, was the proof of concept. The golden child. Same finance background, same polished ambition, now engaged to Sienna. His crowning achievement. She was a senior partner at a major VC firm. The kind of woman my parents bragged about before they even knew her favorite color. Sienna sat quietly, observant. Sharp eyes. Neutral smile. She hadn't said much yet, but she didn't miss anything. So, my mother said, folding her napkin carefully, glancing at me. Chloe's still tinkering with her computer thing. I opened my mouth. Oh, Julian cut in cheerfully. I actually might have something for you. He leaned back, enjoying himself. We could use someone answering phones at the firm. Filing paperwork. Nothing stressful. My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral. The muscle memory of humiliation was strong. That's generous, my father said, not looking at me. Though I doubt she'd last. Ps're boring anyway. One of a million. No real moat. I tried again to speak. Chloe, he interrupted, finally meeting my eyes. Let's not bore everyone with details. There it was. The familiar click of the door shutting. They measured human worth in stock options and country club memberships. In proximity to power. By those metrics, I was nothing. Dinner arrived in stages. Foie gras, duck confit, plates cleared before I finished. I barely tasted anything. My throat felt tight like concrete setting. When the check came, my father reached for it theatrically, pulling out his black card and placing it on the tray with a soft final tap. Don't worry, he said almost kindly. Save your pennies for rent. Julian smirked. My mother exhaled. Sienna glanced at me just for a second, and something unreadable flickered across her face. I smiled, small and polite, because that's what I'd learned to do. But this wasn't new. This was just the climax, and I was done pretending it didn't hurt. A month before the dinner I learned, again, where I stood. It was a Tuesday morning. I was halfway through my second coffee, Slack messages lighting up my screen from 3 different time zones, when my cousin Maribel's Instagram story autoplayed. Champagne flutes clinked in slow motion. Sunlight flashed off the lake like money. Laughter drifted over a long wooden dock where my parents, my brother, and a curated collection of investors and local politicians leaned close together, relaxed and triumphant. The caption read, Summer Solstice. Family plus friends. I stared at it longer than I should have. The lake house had been in our family for years. It was where deals were whispered into existence, where my father's firm impressed clients with sunsets and aged whiskey. I hadn't been invited. No call. No text. Just an algorithm casually informing me I'd been edited out when I asked my mother later. Her voice softened immediately, already defensive. "Oh, honey," she said. "We didn't want to overwhelm you. It was very accomplished people. We didn't want you to feel inadequate." Inadequate. Not busy. Not forgotten. Not a scheduling mistake. Inadequate. The word landed with precision. It wasn't an oversight. It was a quarantine. They weren't protecting me. They were protecting their brand from the stain of my perceived mediocrity. 2 weeks later. It was the 4th of July. Red, white, and blue streamers fluttered across our parents' yard while neighbors milled around with plastic cups and paper plates. My father stood at the grill, tong in hand, holding court. I stayed near the edge, helping my mother refill condiments, already braced. Someone asked about Julian's promotion. Applause followed. Then, inevitably, someone asked about me. My father laughed, loud and easy. "Oh, Chloe," he said, making air quotes with the tongs. "She's finding herself." The group chuckled politely. "Very creative phase," he added. "You know how that goes." The sound of it, the sound of my own father telling the world I was a joke, cut deeper than I expected. I smiled because that was easier than explaining that I wasn't lost. I was just invisible to them. 3 days before the engagement dinner, Julian called. He didn't bother with small talk. "I'll Venmo you 500, he said. "Get something presentable." I paused, phone warm against my ear. "Presentable how?" I asked. "You know," he said. "Something that doesn't look like it came from a bin." There it was. Not help. Curation. He didn't want me comfortable. He wanted me acceptable. A cleaned-up liability for Sienna's inspection. "I'm good," I said calmly. He sighed. "Chloe, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I hung up without raising my voice. The calm was dangerous. It was the kind that came from being done. Because while they curated their image of me, my real life ran in parallel, completely out of frame. What they saw was a failure to launch. A woman still tinkering with computers. What they didn't see were the 4 a.m. calls with developers in Zurich, the whiteboard full of flow diagrams, the months of sleeping 4 hours a night while Ether Systems came online. Ether Systems was an AI-driven supply chain network. Quiet, invisible infrastructure that predicted bottlenecks before they happened. It didn't look flashy, just worked. And 3 major global shipping conglomerates were bidding on it. I was in stealth mode. No announcements, no LinkedIn posts. The Series B funding round was closing, and until the final signatures hit, my mouth stayed shut. While my family played tennis and hosted investors at the lake, I built an empire they didn't know existed. The night Julian offered to buy my dignity for $500, I sat alone at my desk instead. My laptop glowed in the dark as the final digital contracts came through, one after another. I signed them slowly, deliberately. When it was done, I leaned back in my chair and laughed once, quietly. The valuation of my company was higher than my father's entire firm. The irony was so thick I could taste it. And then I closed my laptop, changed into that same gray sweater, and went to Le Jardin French Bistro. Back into the room where they thought they still had the upper hand. The conversation drifted the way it always did. Back to Julian's work, my father's latest deal, my mother's careful commentary on who was buying what and where. I stayed quiet, prepared to disappear again, but Sienna didn't let me. "So, Chloe," she said, turning slightly in her chair, eyes sharp but curious. "What exactly are you building?" The table stilled. It was subtle, but I felt it, the small ripple of discomfort. "It's a software platform," I said evenly, and my father smiled thinly. "She's being modest." Sienna didn't look at him. "What market gap are you solving?" I blinked once, then answered. "Supply chain inefficiency at scale," I said. "Specifically predictive failure points in cross-border logistics." Sienna nodded. "And your burn rate?" Silence. My mother shifted, smoothing her napkin. My father's brow creased slightly, like he was trying to place the word in a context he didn't have. Julian let out a quick laugh. Okay, he said, waving a hand. Let's not turn dinner into a TED Talk. Sienna's gaze stayed on me. Monthly, she clarified. What are you spending to stay alive? Answered. Numbers. Clean. Precise. The discomfort around the table thickened. They knew how to sell houses and stocks, how to charm investors with wine and views. They knew valuations as trophies, not consequences. But this was a different language. Julian leaned back, smiling too hard. Hey, he said lightly. Don't grill her. She's not in our league. There it was. You work with actual founders, he continued, glancing at Sienna. Unicorns. People doing real things. Chloe's just playing around. He said it without malice. That was the worst part. He truly believed it. In his mind, this wasn't cruelty, it was accuracy. And my chest tightened, but I didn't speak. Then why mother seized the opening. We just hope she finds a nice, stable man soon, she said, her voice warm, reasonable. Someone who can take care of her. Pay the bills so she can stop all this nonsense. Nonsense. A man. Rescue. As if my ambition were a phase that required correction. That was when Sienna's polite smile vanished. She set her fork down with a deliberate clink. The sound cut through the room like glass. I saw it then, the shift. The fiancé dissolved, replaced by something sharper, colder. The Silicon Valley shark who didn't waste time on pleasantries. She leaned forward slightly. What did you say the name of your company was, Chloe? My heart hammered against my ribs. The NDA echoed in my mind. The contracts were signed, but the timing. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Still, my voice stayed calm. Ether Systems. The words hung there. Sienna froze, her eyes widened. Just a fraction. Not dramatic. Not performative. Recognition doesn't need to announce itself. It arrives like a click into place. The room went silent. No one else understood why, but I did, and so did she. Ether. Sienna said it slowly, like she was testing the word for weight. Ether Systems, she repeated. My father laughed, short and uncertain. Yes, well, Vance is our last name, he said, glancing around the table. What's your point? Sienna didn't answer him. She looked directly at me. Wait, she said carefully. C.V. Vance. The air in the room shifted. My father's smile froze, still waiting to be included in a joke that had already passed him by. Yes, I said. I lifted my water glass, took a small sip. Vance. That was when Sienna leaned back, exhaling sharply. Oh my God, she whispered. Then louder. You're the founder. No fanfare. No explanation. I just nodded once. Something flickered across her face. Part awe, part terror. Like someone realizing the ghost story they'd been chasing was suddenly sitting across from them. Very real, very calm. You're the ghost of Chicago, she said. We thought you didn't exist. I stayed quiet. Let the words land. Calmness in the storm. After a lifetime of being dismissed, I wasn't going to rush the moment. Sienna turned slowly to Julian. You said you wanted to introduce me to visionaries, she said. Julian opened his mouth, closed it. His confidence faltered for the first time that night. My firm has been trying to meet C.V. Vance for 8 months, Sienna continued, her voice controlled but sharp. 8. We made a standing offer to lead your Series B. My mother blinked. My father leaned forward, suddenly alert. We couldn't get past the legal firewall, Sienna said. No assistant. No PR. No leaks. Silicon silence. She gestured vaguely at the table. And the visionary was here. At dinner. The irony settled in thick layers. Then Sienna pulled out her phone and slammed it face up on the table. The sound echoed. The headline filled the screen. The Invisible Unicorn. How Ether Systems became a $40 million disruptor in Silicon silence. No photo. Just the logo.in, the first paragraph, bold and unmistakable. Founded by C.V. Vance. My father's face drained of color. He looked like a wax figure left too close to heat. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Julian's expression fractured. Shock splitting into jealousy, then into something close to fear, all the insults from earlier. The jokes, the offers, the pity, hung in the air now. Radioactive. Ridiculous. I didn't know, my father stammered. Sienna didn't even look at him. No, she said coolly. You didn't ask. The difference mattered. Ignorance could be accidental. This was willful blindness. For the first time in my life, my family had absolutely nothing to say. Their silence was the most beautiful symphony I had ever heard. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I simply placed my napkin on the table. I stood and smoothed my dress, the one I'd bought with my own money. Money that could buy this entire restaurant 3 times over. I turned to Sienna. It was a pleasure to meet you, I said warmly. Have your people call my assistant on Monday. We can discuss the Series B. Her eyes flicked to my parents, then back to me. Of course. Then I looked at my family. They looked small, shrunken. I have a board meeting at 7 a.m., I said. Enjoy the wine. I paused just long enough. Dad, I added. You've got the bill, right? And with that I walked out, heels clicking softly against marble. Leaving them to sit with the truth they'd refused to cede, I walked out of the private wine cellar without looking back. The door closed behind me with a soft, final click, and for the first time that night my shoulders loosened. The dining room beyond was alive with movement. Silverware chiming, low laughter, servers gliding between tables, but none of it reached me. I moved through it untouched, like I was already somewhere else, when I pushed open the front door. The cool night air of the city wrapped around me. It was sharp and clean, washing the last of the cellar's stale weight from my lungs. The smell of rain on pavement, distant traffic, real life that I stopped for a moment on the sidewalk, breathing it in. The silence behind me wasn't the silence of me being ignored. It was the silence of a hierarchy collapsing. For years, they had been loud because they believed they were correct. Authority makes noise when it thinks it's permanent. Tonight, that certainty had cracked. And when systems of power break, they don't explode. They go quiet. They didn't lose a daughter that night. They had lost her years ago. Slowly. With every eye roll when I spoke, every joke at my expense, every moment they decided my potential was inconvenient. Loss doesn't always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it accumulates, one dismissal at a time, until there's nothing left to salvage. Tonight, they just realized they had lost the privilege of knowing the woman I had become. I had built my life in silence. Not because I was hiding, but because approval was never the fuel. I didn't need applause to grow something real. Worth, I learned, exists long before it's recognized. They measured value by appearances. I measured it by impact. They believed stability came from tradition. I built it from vision. They thought I needed to be rescued. I rescued myself. This was never about money, or revenge, or proving them wrong. That it was about being seen by the right people. It was about choosing who deserved access to my time, my energy, my success. Power isn't loud. Power is walking away without explaining yourself. I checked my phone. A message from my assistant. Calendar reminder for the morning. The future, already in motion. So I walked down the street, heels steady against the pavement, one truth settled in fully. You don't owe your story to people who never bothered to ask. And sometimes, the most powerful exit isn't dramatic, it's final. If you've ever had to build your empire in silence while the world doubted you, this story was for you. If you've ever been underestimated, talked over, laughed at, or quietly written off by the very people who should have believed in you first, you're not alone here. This isn't just a comment section. This is a space for the overlooked, the dismissed, the ones who kept going anyway. This is your safe space. And if this story hit you hard, if it made you angry, emotional, satisfied, or quietly vindicated, don't let that feeling fade into silence. Those reactions mean something. They mean the story touched a nerve because it reflected a truth too many people live through but rarely get to see validated. If you felt rage at the cruelty, relief at the reversal, or joy watching power finally shift, acknowledge it. Sit with it. Then share it. Hitting the like button isn't just a click. It tells the algorithm and the world that these raw, real stories of betrayal, resilience, and justice actually matter. That stories about underestimated people don't deserve to be buried. Head to the comments and tell us what moment got you. Was it the dinner? The dismissal. The silence at the end. Whose side were you on, and why? Your words might be the thing someone else scrolling at 2 a.m. desperately needs to read. And if you know someone who's still being doubted, still building quietly, still surrounded by people who don't see their worth, share this story with them. Let it be a warning to the careless. Let it be fuel for the patient. Let karma echo a little further. Welcome to Echoes of Revenge, a channel dedicated to exclusive, gut-wrenching stories of strength, deception, quiet resilience, and ice-cold justice. These aren't recycled tales. These are stories you won't find anywhere else because they're told from the side that usually gets silenced. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell icon, and turn all notifications on so you never miss what comes next. Because your likes, comments, shares, and subscriptions don't just support a channel, they keep silenced voices alive. They turn individual stories into collective power. Sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't staying quiet, it's being heard loud and clear. Thank you for being part of this community. Now let's keep the echoes ringing.